Well, hello, everyone. As Bill said, I am Sarah Pedigo with South Carolina Sea Grant, and I'll be co-moderating this workforce development panel with Mariel Marquez, the Texas Sea Grant Aquaculture Specialist. So as our panel comes up here, so we will be covering a discussion around workforce development, including, ongoing training programs that we have, lessons learned from those, as well as challenges, opportunities, and next steps for that. So I did want to start with a brief introduction of our panelists. And so we have Albert Nguyen with Tallahassee Community College. We have Brian Rackley with Kimball House, bringing a restaurant business perspective. We have Brian Snyder with Carteret Community College. And we have Imani Black, founder of Minorities in Aquaculture. Thank you all for joining us for this discussion. But to start off and kind of introduce this topic, increasingly shellfish aquaculture is being recognized as a viable career path. And not only that, but the stage is being set for the expansion of aquaculture in the United States, given the continued federal investment to aquaculture development. And also, just the high demand that exists for local seafood products. And so a key to facilitating the healthy expansion of aquaculture is going to be to train a skilled and a knowledgeable workforce that can keep moving this industry forward. And so when we think about workforce development, we all may be familiar with particular programs, potentially those that work to train entry-level workers or hired hands, potentially those for entrepreneurs wanting to learn the business side of things, as well as the aquaculture technical skills, or even in related sectors such as seafood preparation and processing. And so just pointing out how broad workforce development can look around aquaculture, I'd like to now turn it over to our panel to hear more of their background and also for them to talk about some of their workforce development initiatives that they have led and been a part of. So, Albert, I will pass it to you.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right, so I'm Al Nguyen. I'm with the Tallahassee Community College, Cullen Brown Institute. We stood up an oyster aquaculture training program probably about 10 years ago now. So a lot of the farmers that are here now have participated in our program, came through our program, and is the only one in the state of Florida. So part of our initiative in doing a workforce development training program, when we first started, Apalachicola was starting to close down, and so we needed something for the farmers to kind of bring back that economical input that they had during that time period. And the way we kind of approach things is non-traditional. So everything out of our building is about sustainability, how about to start your own business. And that's kind of how we started workforce development for us. Traditionally, workforce development, you have to have partners, and then you gear your training towards those industry partners. We did it a different way. We wanted people to start their own business coming out of our building, out of our training program. And I don't know if my slide is up, but some of the initiatives that we have, this summer we're doing a nursery training program to deal with some of the seed availability issues that the industry is now having. We work closely with our farmers in our area to kind of communicate with them what the needs are. And we try to drill down into that too as we go. Some of the other things what we're looking at are things like stackable credentials. So you as a farmer, would you rather have training on like water quality? So as I promote my oyster and put it out, the information out there about my oyster and talk about the branding of it, do I need some water quality training to talk about what these are the waters it comes from to promote it as being a premier product? So we're going to work on certifications to allow people to come through our training program, get that water quality certification that'll be industry recognized. Also, with the seat availability, if you have staff that you want to train them up, we can train your whole staff on how to do that. We've revamped our oyster aquaculture training program. to make it more accessible beyond our borders. So not just here in Florida, particularly Wakulla County and the surrounding area, but we now have students that are in Texas, California, North Carolina, Virginia, because we've taken a large part of our program and put it online, so to make it accessible for people. The incorporation of habitat restoration, what we learned from that, because we also are trying to bring back the wild oyster harvest as part of our program and lead that under what we call stackable credentials. So I may be an oyster farmer today, but I may want to get into, doing habitat restoration, may want to do some grant funding for that, or I may even want to get into marine science or environmental science. So we have a way to change that industry certification to what we call a college credit certificate too as well. And so that's basically us as a program, and we will continue to span and work with a lot of the people that are in this room. So. Sorry.
Hey, my name is Brian Rackley, and I'm here for St. Patrick's Day. I am a partner at Kimball House in Decatur, Georgia. Our restaurant has specialized for almost a decade in offering oysters from all over the United States, and it's been like a pretty awesome privilege over the past half decade to really get an opportunity to begin focusing on stuff in the South Atlantic and especially the Gulf, where us included are participating in farming projects. We've been farming oysters ourselves for a little over a year now, and by farming, I mean just basically doing what Jody says. So that's, if you don't know what you're doing, just ask Jody. She's over there. To say we have an actual workforce initiative, I think is probably, because we're in a restaurant context, it's so much different than an academic context. We start new hires out, front of house people, and I assume that's what we're focusing on here today because they're the ones that have to face-to-face meet with guests and be responsible for answering questions or finding someone who does. So I mean, it's fairly organic from day to day, but we start people out with a guide, something that we've written that we kind of edit every year or so. And the point is to give people sort of a general baseline go-to handbook for what we do, who we work with, why we work with them, and what our goals are. And essentially after that, it's really just a matter of getting mental and physical reps, answering questions, seeing the product, looking at it over and over again, even helping the guys in the oyster room build trays. Seeing oysters thousands of times is pretty cool. If you've got 20 appellations on your menu, but you've seen them a million times, you can start to tell what's what without even looking at a ticket. And so we hope people will get to that point eventually, but it just takes time. But generally speaking, we, just like any restaurant, we have a lineup every day before we go into service, and part of it's dedicated to shellfish. So we talk about what's gone off, what's coming on. If we have any stories to relay, we do that, especially if it's a farm that we haven't seen in a while. I find that shortening the distance between the farm and the restaurant is critical for us being able to tell your story and sell your oyster. So that's always something that we focus on, but it's really hitting this information in lineup every day and repeatedly talking about who's doing what and why we're buying that product and why we're buying it from that person in particular as part of the ongoing story. So yeah, I mean, our training initiative is pretty much 5 minutes a day in lineup.
I'm Brian Snyder. I'm here at Carteret Community College. So we do have a slide up now, but so we have the aquaculture technology program, which is anywhere from a 1 semester to a 2-year associate's degree program at Carteret Community College. But since this is Oyster South, I'm fairly certain that the reason I was asked to come here and talk to everybody is about the NC Shellfish Farming Academy. So that is a continuing education class that we offer. I worked for North Carolina Sea Grant to help develop that class. So that class is a partnership between North Carolina Sea Grant and Carteret Community College. But that's kind of like an 8-week oyster farming boot camp. So there are a lot of students from that class here today. So if you have questions, I'm sure they'll also be happy to tell you about it. But we basically take them all the way through from, hey, this is what shellfish farming is and where it comes from, all the way through to working seed and then up to bagging up clams and oysters and putting them in, tagging them correctly and making sure that you're following all your compliance and regulations and everything like that. But just making sure everyone gets their hands on every step of the process at least one time through that class is really what it is, so that when they're out and starting their own farm and everything else, all those things that they're going to need to do, they have at least seen before and have some good background knowledge to make farm decisions based on.
Hi, everybody. Oh, God, I'm way too close. My name is Imani Black. I'm originally from the Eastern Shore of Maryland, and I've been working in oyster aquaculture commercially for 6 years. So when I founded Minorities in Aquaculture in 2020, it was really about the workforce development piece of bringing in people of color into aquaculture, because I feel like aquaculture is the best industry to work in, but also we're looking for really skillful people that are really passionate about just getting into this industry, no matter what discipline they're in. So in my nonprofit, it's really looking at women of color right now, just based on capacity. I'm the only person who's running the organization right now, and that's a demographic that I sit in. So for us, it's partnering with oyster farms, institutions, and others in the industry to get all ranges of experience. So on the farm, in restaurants, in the lab, kind of anything. So we don't really feel like there's a one track to workforce development in aquaculture, but our biggest thing is active minority engagement. So really meeting people where they are with their education of aquaculture, because usually our workforce development is not as diverse because those demographics don't know anything about aquaculture. It's not that they're not interested. They're usually the most skillful people. And so for us, it's just giving them an avenue to create their own aquaculture career on their own terms.
Thanks, Imani. And one note I would add to that, Imani and Minorities in Aquaculture were very instrumental in a partnership with South Carolina Sea Grant last summer to offer an internship opportunity for minority women enrolled in colleges and universities to go out and experience what it was like to work on an oyster farm and see what shellfish farming was. So we were able to place 3 different women of color on oyster farms in South Carolina for them to work the duration of the summer. So that was awesome, and we are planning to offer that again this summer. So just putting that note out there.
Yeah, also huge shout out to Oyster South in that as well. They were really instrumental in our first year in 2022. We had 5 women of color that went to different organizations, and now they're all, again, building their career in aquaculture because they had that opportunity to be able to do that. So we're hoping to double that number for this summer. And I know there's a few people in this room that I've been meaning to talk to about that have reached out to me, so I haven't forgot. We were just waiting on funding, and it's come in, so now we can have those conversations. So yeah, thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, and I highly recommend buying one of the shirts. I have one, even though I'm not a woman of color. I'm a man of color. Anyway, so yeah. So the question coming up is one thing that everyone's pretty familiar with is that farmers and restaurateurs, chefs, we all come. It's very diverse. Who's going to take the soda? It's very diverse. You get, very few are actually traditional water people, watermen, waterwomen. So that is that's challenging. So what strategies have you found to be the most effective in attracting and retaining a skilled workforce in your initiatives with people coming from such diverse backgrounds? With I've had like ex-judges, lawyers, bankers, teachers. So how do you attract them and train them in your workforce development?
All right, I guess we'll start. So when we started our program, I think, just basically the structure of the program that kind of attracted people from different backgrounds to how. Just kind of give you some of the people here. If Keller doesn't mind me pointing her out, she's one of the people. But her background is quite different from Dewey. Dewey is worked for Boeing at one time, and so, and then you have the traditional farmers. And so what we proposed is the start of a business for everyone. And so I think that intrigued a lot of people just talking about entrepreneurship, and which is not traditional when you're thinking about workforce development. So that's kind of how we were different from a lot of other programs when you're talking about workforce development. We are really basically an incubator at WI. That's basically what we are. And that's kind of how we got a lot of people from different backgrounds interested in what we were doing.
For us, it's really, we're open to all different disciplines. I think we can all agree that aquaculture is in this upward motion right now, where a multitude of different disciplines are really required now in our industry, communications, trade skills, kind of all of those different things. So we have a multitude of different members, again, women of color, that come to me and they're like, well, I'm an architect, but I really want to get into oyster farming. And I'm like, well, lucky for you, there's like 3D printing for oyster reefs and things like that. And now we have a partnership with MIT and their architecture department because of that member and wanting to connect her with the aquaculture industry. Communications is a really big thing in aquaculture right now. And I know a lot of farmers don't want to do social media, but there are young kids out there that will do it for you. And so if you just give them the opportunity, they might not have the skills on the farm that you need, but we can teach them that. But they can also teach you how to use social media, how to use Instagram, TikTok, things like that. So for us, it's really expanding what disciplines are really needed in aquaculture because it's not just hands-on right now.
I'd love to tell you that people came to a restaurant for employment because of shellfish, but we all know it's for money and free health insurance. Well, we offer this if you're looking for work.
As far as for us attracting and retaining them, we actually don't do a lot of that. I think that more so, especially in North Carolina, the oyster farmers that are here have done most of the attracting them. We advertised the course a few times, and anytime we advertise it, we end up with a wait list. So we've kind of not done that anymore. We still have a wait list. So as far as us attracting it, it's all the stuff that everyone in this room does with social media posts and talking about oyster farming all the time. But I do also think that kind of what Al said, to echo that, we take more of like an entrepreneurial side to it. Like it's almost specifically geared towards people that want to start their own business in shellfish farming. So I think that is a big draw of it too. And we built it that way because that's what we were seeing as the industry grew in North Carolina, was that a lot of people didn't want to go and work on a shellfish farm. They wanted to go and start their own shellfish farm. And they were going to do that whether we taught them how to do it or not. So we figured we should show them some of the right ways to go about doing that. And then, they started their own business, so they're retaining themselves once they've learned all the skills. So
I think another key to that is simplifying it. So regardless of how much experience you've had, we take you out on the water, show you what to do and all aspects of it, how to put together the equipment, simplifying it for everybody. And then we introduce farmers who have been out on the water, who've been part of our program, who have successful business, and you go and intern with them. So you learn different ways of how to do the process. So we're able to attract people who were worried, I don't know what I'm doing. I've never been out on the water before. And they were reassured by the way we structured our program that they will learn something from that and be able to do it by the end of it.
So how would you assess the, it seems like there's a lot of varied skill gaps in the industry. How would you assess these skill gaps to get everyone on the same page when they're starting off?
Well, I don't mind. Y'all don't mind me. I'm sorry. I think the first thing is that you have to be willing to work. And if you're willing to do the work, and if you don't mind the atmosphere, that's kind of how we start off assessing it. We have some people who take the class and they say, well, maybe this is not for me. And that's okay. We tell them from the very beginning, this is hard work. You got in Florida, even in Florida, you still have days when you're out on out on the water and it's cold. So will you be willing to go out in these environments and still be able to do the work? So that's kind of how we, at a basic, very basic level, approached it for the people who are part of our class.
So for our program, like the development of it, for us, deciding where those gaps were was really a reaction to going and talking to people in the industry, because the shellfish industry is, you know, everyone talks, everyone sees what other farms are doing. You're all out there on the water together for the most part. So going and talking with industry members in North Carolina, hey, these are the things that we're seeing all the new farmers have trouble with. So we started making sure that those things were in the class, and then after that, like we'll go over it as many times as you need to for you to be able to do that. We have a separate like marine trades part of the college, so I'm not teaching them how to drive a boat and things like that. I know who to tell them to go learn that from, but we just make sure that as far as our, you know, specifically shellfish farming skills, we'll spend as much time as you need getting you to where you need to be with it, provided we all actually get to go to sleep that night when class is over and we're not there until 2 in the morning.
Yeah, I think for me it's a little different because people of color are a gap. There's not a lot of us in this industry. So for me, it's really trying to debunk this idea that people of color aren't interested in aquaculture or marine science is probably the biggest gap in that because they are. And so it's just like getting them to the door is the biggest gap for me, is like really getting them an opportunity because, yeah, kind of like when we put out our internships, we don't have a lack of applicants. So I think it's just basically the gap for them is just not even knowing how to find opportunities, how to even know how to get even into aquaculture to be able to be useful and to be able to be like impactful in our industry.
So following question is, how do you make sure that your workforce development efforts align with the evolving needs of the industry and the broader economy of this industry? Yeah, that's a heavy question.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, we continue to have a relationship with the farmers, right? So when you look at when COVID hit, you know, how do you pivot to be able to still sell oysters? What do you do, right? So we've asked that question. We try to provide solutions. We talk to experts, Mario, Dr. Walton. We talk to these people, and because this is a community, and so we try to not to just put it on us, but to be a facilitator of that information and figure out how can we better help the farmers. So, and then looking at some of the skill gaps, you know, what if I don't know how to run a business? What if I've never done that? Can we provide the necessary training to help you learn how to run your business, everything from HR to what other legal ramifications that you may experience, marketing. So again, with COVID, what we found out, a lot of the restaurants were closing down. So me as a farmer, what am I going to do with my product? And so learning how to change that narrative is one of the things that we helped our farmers being able to, just by communicating with them. And then what you find out, the expertise may not come from you, but some other farmer that had success, and then you want to make sure you relay that information out to everybody else.
And you'll get, if you get 50 farmers in a room, you'll find out 50 ways to do something.
Absolutely.
And it's always the best. So yeah, that's kind of a challenge.
Yeah, I just kind of want to echo that. It's partially an answer to your previous question too. Like recognizing that skill gap is also recognizing the skill gap that I have and, you know, running that program. So there's a lot of, I know I'm not a business person. I'm not going to be the one that teaches a lesson on business plan writing. I'm bad at that. So we partner with someone to teach that part. We partner with our regulators in the state to teach the students the regulations. We have industry members come and talk to students about how they're marketing and selling their oysters and everything like that. So I think having that community and having everybody that we have involved in that class come and help us teach it really is what keeps us up to date on what the industry is
I'll just add on the farming side of things that since we're talking about skill gaps, if you have a farm and you don't know how to operate a boat, that's bad.
That is a great segue into our new program called Minorities on Course. And yeah, so that's like one of the things that we're really looking at in Minorities in Aquaculture too, is like, where can we give the skills before they get onto the farm? Obviously, like working on a farm, like you have to get that experience, you have to actually work on a farm, but what are the skills that like you can get beforehand, before you get there? And one of those things, like you said, is boating. So our program Minorities on Course not only pays for people to get their captain's license, but it also gives them the opportunity to get their sea time that they need to get all of like the different certifications that they need to. And so over 2022, we had 4 of our first applicants, or I guess candidates, that graduated with their captain's license. So now they're going through that process, and now they're building their career on the Chesapeake Bay right now with that foot already in the door. Might not know what they want to do, but at least they have that experience where they can go to a job and say, well, hey, I have my captain's license, and they can learn and they can be taught along the way. So, yeah.
So one of the questions that I was actually thinking about this last night after a few beers, is that one of the biggest challenges for workforce development is obviously engaging people, but how do you all assess and engaging people in developing skilled workforce when a lot of farmers and people that want to get into it, they live in such rural areas? Literally, I live in Palacios, Texas. No one knows where that is. So a few people. But how do you basically go out or reach out to people that live in the middle of nowhere, but they live by really good water where they can farm? Or let's say a restaurant, you want to reach out to them because they have like really good oysters. So how do you all assess that for workforce development?
I guess I'll go again first. So basically, that's where our program, and Mario, you know that's where our program is actually in a rural area, Wakulla County. And when we first started the program, how we started the program was basically a lot of people in the area came to us and said, hey, we need to do something about the oysters, right? And so listening to the community and what the needs of the community is how we built out the program. Oh, by the way, you have Tallahassee, which is north of us. And so you got a lot of participants from Tallahassee too as well to come down and be a part of that, to fill out that program. I will say it is some difficulty. We tried to go in Apalachicola to talk to the farmers there, to bring them on at first. And it was difficult because this is something that's new. This is a change. It's not, this is not over harvesting. I'm not going out and culling every day. I'm actually farming it. So that was a change, being able to talk to them, in a more intimate setting, and try to relate that information to them that, hey, this is available to you, and this is generational. This is a generational business for you to be able to continue on what you're doing with your family. So I think if you can bring that home for people can relate to it, as long as they can relate to it, then they'll be engaged by it.
So we, Morehead City, North Carolina is not, I wouldn't necessarily call it as rural as some of the places Mario was referring to, but we're not a big city or anything, but we are pretty centrally located in the state. So we have made the whole class hybrid, online, and recorded, because one of the big things is that we know a lot of people that are going to be taking a continuing education course about how to start a shellfish farm are coming from a career. They have commitments and day jobs and everything else. So having that available where they could, watch it at their leisure and when they had time, or attend it online. But like a lot of the demographic that are looking at starting shellfish farms don't like doing things online. So we have people driving 6 hours to come to Tuesday evening classes. So we haven't really taken the program to more rural areas yet, other than just making it accessible anywhere you have the internet. So, most of the program anywhere you have the internet.
I'm going to answer it with a question. I mean, don't you kind of feel like at this point that the rural areas are, if they're not on the map, that they're going to be soon, and that people are going to those rural areas? People with scholastic backgrounds, people who have been trained at least in some form or fashion in marine sciences or aquaculture, they're looking for places like that. So I don't know that a lot of them are undiscovered. Now, how you get people to go to those places to be part of those teams, I think that's a question that all of us have. I mean, like I said, we've only been farming for a year, and it's a very small operation, but I mean, it's me, Jesse, and Matt. So you know, we have to hit pause on restaurant stuff and go to Florida twice a month to make sure our clips haven't broken. And for us to like be able to find someone to be part of our little program, it beats the shit out of me. I don't know how we would do that. That's why we've leaned super heavily on Kanan and the Hawks for like hand holding and help and questions. So I don't know, man. If you're going into one of those areas, if you don't know what you're doing, I hope you have a mentor, because we've had great ones, and I know that they had Keller before they knew what they were doing. So I mean, you really need someone to hold your hand for a little while before you start running off to rural areas to farm shellfish. So.
Well, yeah, and if you don't mind me speaking a little bit more. So I'm going to probably say a dirty word, is politics. It's a political environment wherever you go. And if you know basically who in that community.
The gatekeeper
Right,
of the community,
go.
yeah.
That's what I was trying to get to. If you can find your inroads with that gatekeeper, and then you can get them on board with what you're doing, that will make a huge dent in your effort to try to get people engaged in that community.
Yeah, I think for us, I know there's a little bit of confusion about who can engage with minorities in aquaculture. Mario, you brought this up a few times, so I wanted to address it with this question. This is where everybody can engage with minorities in aquaculture, because I won't know about those jobs until you tell me. So even though we're only focused on women of color right now, that's just a piece of the pie. And again, it's just because of capacity. That's not how we want to operate for the rest of our legacy. So for right now, if you have a job that you want to get filled and want to diversify your workforce, hi, my name is Imani Black. I'm the founder of Minorities in Aquaculture, and we can do that for you. Or at least we can be one of those handholders for you. One of the things that's also that we like to try to do is widen our net a little bit, or cast our net a little bit wider when we're doing internships or different opportunities. Most of the time, if I don't get a hit on a job, I go to the local HBCUs or I go to the local community colleges and I say, hey, so I know that you have a biology department. Can you put this out to your students? And we did that with Howard University. I mean, within 24 hours, we had probably 48 applicants for an Oyster job. So it's really we have to go to the demographics that aren't a part of aquaculture. We have to go to them until they're readily knowledgeable about what's happening in aquaculture, and until then we kind of have to hold their hand and be like, hey, I don't know if you knew this, but do you know anything about aquaculture? Because most of the time, at HBCUs, they have biology departments, but those students want to get into health services. They're taking the same amount of classes, and they could get a biology degree in marine biology, but they don't even know that's an option. So we go in and we say, hey, with those same amount of classes, you can do X, Y, and Z, and here's opportunities to be able to do that. So I think it's just going to where we want our demographics to grow.
We've already touched on this a bit, but asking the question, what are the biggest challenges we face in developing a skilled workforce?
All right, so I guess one of the problems is that when you look at employers, I don't care what spectrum you are, even for oyster farmers, that we're all looking for workers, but we need them now. So now for us, being a training program is getting you that skilled farmer immediately. So they don't have time for an A degree, 4 years degrees, that's not what we're talking about. So can you train my worker in 6 to 8 weeks, basically, and get them out on site so they can be productive for me? That's one of the challenges that we're facing now as a timeline?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a restaurant. I mean, you've heard the stories. It's just tricky. We have a hard time training people quickly as well. I mean, it's so much repetition. It's so much information. I mean, think about how many words, if you're not an oyster farmer, how many words have you heard today that you have never heard before? I mean, it's a lot. So when people come into a restaurant, whether you're talking about shellfish or wine or cocktails or food, and then the steps of service and all this, it takes a new hire anywhere from like 3 to 6 months to be good in the context of our restaurant. And that's someone who's like worked in service before. So in order for us to strengthen our workplace, it's really just a matter of, I don't know. I mean, there's no way for us to really simplify it. It just honestly takes time, and it takes a stronger labor pool. And I think with the strong economy that we've had for the past few years, there's just hasn't been a lot. I mean, coupled with COVID and the fact that a lot of people just realize that it's kind of a shitty industry. They found other stuff to do, and good for them. I mean, it made us kind of open our eyes to a lot of things that we were doing wrong. So we're taking steps to be better restaurant owners and to make it a better place to work, so that people will want to come in and they will want to put in the effort to work and get good faster, because those are the people that are contributing to the overall success of the restaurant and ultimately their bottom lines.
Brian, I've got a follow-up question for you, talking about the restaurants. How do you deal with developing a skilled workforce in your restaurant when typically restaurants have a higher turnover than other places?
It's not really. I don't know. I mean, I think that there's plenty of restaurants that turn over, and we have moments where we'll turn over pockets of people. That just happens. The tricky thing for us is that we knew that once people got comfortable dining in restaurants again, following the first like 10, 11 months of the pandemic, I mean, the staff was shot out. They were traumatized. They're just told so much stuff and never knew. I mean, by us, by everybody, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. Everyone was just flying by the seat of their pants. So we knew we were going to have a mass turnover at that point in time. So it's really just like it's been the last couple of years of trying to like rebuild the labor foundation, because you have people that are always going to, we're going to be able to hire people that will stay in our company for several years. It's a good job. It's a hard job, but it's a good job. It's reliable. So at this point, it's really just a matter of like I said, reestablishing a strong foundation, because those ultimately are the people that are going to be training the new people that come in. And that gives us an opportunity to keep those people longer, because they'll be good at their jobs faster. When you're confident in your job, you're better at it, and you like what you're doing more, and you ultimately make more money as well. So, hopefully I answered that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is kind of like going what Brian said is making sure that the opportunities that we're sending our members to are good companies, that they're going to get treated well, especially women of color. I would be devastated if I sent a woman to a farm and they dealt with the same things that I've dealt with in my career. Because not only will one opportunity or one, kind of experience of misogyny or anything like that, like deter someone from being in our industry, but they will literally never come back. That's not how we can get retention. So, I think for me, it's like really trying to drive in that like we have to stop like wanting to check this box of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and like actually check our spaces instead. Because I will send people to you all day long. There are people that are interested, but you won't retain them if you're not treating them well. If they don't feel like that they are valued as people or valued as whoever they are coming to you. There's a lot of really great farms out here that I have sent people to that have had really good experiences that want to come back for the second year. But I have to be very strategic about who I send people to, because again, it only takes one time, and I don't want to go backwards instead of going forward. So I think for us, it's just really recognizing that, because that's like a real thing right now.
mean, I think as far as most of the people that go into shellfish farming from the farming side of it that are really like the kind of worker that are going to be good at it end up wanting to do it for themselves is I think one of the things that we see. So really the people that end up going and working in it are either working at a place that's growing and treating those farmers, like those farmhands well and making it easy for them to do their jobs, or they're going to go and try to make it easier for themselves to do that job on their own is one of the things that we see a lot with people coming out of that program.
Thanks for that. And for the last remaining minutes, are there any comments or questions from the audience?
Hello. Thank you all for joining the panel. It's something that I'm really concerned about because I'm currently looking for a manager and a worker as well. And I was wondering if y'all could give me the first two places that y'all look when you're going to go hire somebody.
Where are you located?
North of Wilmington, 30 minutes.
Okay.
Wilmington, North Carolina, not Delaware.
I would say start with your local colleges, local community colleges, right? And also this guy right here, apparently too. Yeah, right?
So I just want to echo that, like I was a student at Carteret Community College too, so that does work. Like people email Carteret Community College, we tell all the students about those jobs, and that's how I've ended up on Oyster Farms and 7 months in a cabin in remote Alaska working on a salmon hatchery. Like that works. Emailing your local educational institutions and saying, hey, these are what I'm looking for. Do you have people that you think might be good at these roles? Like, and we'll either tell you we have some that might be kind of all right, or yeah, we've got the right person, or honestly, no, maybe not right now, but hopefully soon. So.
We use a term with our Oyster farmers, internships, because that's free labor. So they get them from our students. They tend to work on them, and then what we try to encourage them to do before you open up your own farm, work with someone for a year, maybe a couple of years. You learn from them, and then they tend to continue on that relationship with that farmer that they're working for anyway. So,
Yeah, one of the things that we've seen beneficial is apprenticeships, where you just find farmers that are already in the water and someone new. Sometimes you'll get a Willy Wonka farmer that, it's all secrets. They're my secrets. But have y'all seen pitfalls or anything like that from, the apprenticeships or benefits like that?
I think one of the things that we've seen is that the people that we've sent on internships and apprenticeships like that, the person that owns the farm that they were working at really liked them, and the student didn't want to do that anymore as soon as the internship was over. But that's not normally the case. Most of the time, we try to pair it with what one of our students are interested in and a farm that's actually doing that. So they've had quite a few that have stayed on, but that's not always the case. And there are some that don't want to tell people things.
Yeah, they're the Willy Wonka farmer. Yeah.
They do that, but then if the people stay on, then they get the secrets. But initially, they don't get any. So.
Yeah, so if you want to talk about the pitfalls, that's definitely some of the pitfalls. We try to encourage them to diversify, try to find different ways of how people do it differently. And then you can kind of figure out how you want to do it yourself. And so that because if you learn one way and you may be under one person, that may kind of turn you off a bit. But if you learn from different people, that may help you, encourage you a bit. Go ahead.
Hi, I am wondering about the relationship that some of these technological or technical training programs have with farm owners to facilitate bringing potential employees or employees they want to bring on to the programs. Is there a connection between those that own the farms and the technical training programs? Thanks.
Yeah, we just work on different projects and introducing students. We take field trips. We do all that. So we try to maintain pretty close relationships with people who are involved in the industry. Everyone gets busy and we forget to send emails every now and again, but we do take classes out. We work on projects with industry partners. So at least from our perspective, that having those relationships in the industries that you're training people to work in is pretty invaluable.
We like to post social media images of us drinking beer and having lots of fun. That seems to attract people.
All right, so we try to stay in regular communication with a lot of the farmers. And so a lot of the things that we offer training on forest technology is a direct result of what their needs are. So a few of our farmers have asked for water quality. How do I do that? How do I get training on that? So we're developing a program for there to be a certification process. You need to know salinity, but you also need, and that's kind of simple, but you need to know nitrogen, nitrates, and nitrites. What does that mean? You know, for me as a farmer, you know, what does that mean about the quality of my water that's surrounding me, right? So you need to know that. So you want to be able to monitor these levels, be able to interpret that data that you're getting. And then if I don't have that skill set, can I hire somebody on that has that skill set and work for me?
All right, y'all. So this is excellent conversation, but we got a schedule to keep. So thank you all of you panelists and the moderators. Big round of applause.